Hi there, my name is Maru. Today I'm going to be doing a quick little demo on the TS Mega by MeloAudio. This little unit is an audio interface and a MIDI controller Footswitch. So it packs a lot in a very small little box. A while back I did a demo on the MIDI controller, also by MeloAudio. Now this unit has the exact same MIDI capabilities as the MIDI controller, but on top of that it's an actual audio interface, so you can plug in your guitar, a microphone, and just have everything kind of in one. You can use it with your iPhone or your iPad, so it's completely portable. You can definitely also use it as a regular audio interface if you want to plug it into your computer and run Pro Tools or whatever your recording software is. I already have an audio interface that I always use, so I thought I'd demo this in more of a mobile situation. So if you were taking this to a live gig, or if you're taking this somewhere to practice, how you can set it up with just your iPhone or your iPad. I don't have an iPad, so I'm going to be demonstrating it with my iPhone. I'm also going to be using the Jam Up app. So in this demo, I'm going to explain how you can connect your guitar and how all the connections work, as well as how to set up the unit with your software, in this case Jam Up or BiasFX. So how you can assign MIDI and have it switch between different tones and presets. So yeah, let's get to it. So as you can see right now, the unit is on. So right now I have it powered by this little power cable that's just going to my outlet. But the cool thing about this is that you could power it just from your iPhone or your iPad without any need of having an actual external power source. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug it,
just so I can show you guys. Oh my gosh, I unplugged it.
So now that it's unplugged, there's no power, but if I go ahead and plug in my phone, so I'm just gonna go ahead and plug in my iPhone here, you'll see that the interface turns back on. So now it's getting power straight from my iPhone. So right now I have the iPhone connected with this little adapter cable that comes with the TS Mega. So it's essentially just a USB to Lightning connection, so you can plug in your iPad or your iPhone, and it's going into the back USB connection here. So that's where we'll plug in our iPad or our iPhone. Now my iPhone's battery is unfortunately really bad, so I'm gonna go ahead and unplug and plug in the power source again. Alright, so I plugged it in. So now I also have the power source plugged in, not just my iPhone. Okay, so before getting into the actual software stuff, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the connections. So this unit is pretty simple how it's set up, which is really nice. So right here we have left input and right input. I have my guitar cable plugged into my left input, and then as you can see there's also an XLR right input. So if you also wanted to plug in a microphone, you can definitely have a microphone and a guitar plugged in at the same time. You can also connect a condenser microphone because it has phantom power right here on this little button. So that's pretty cool. So that's about it as far as input goes. This little button here is, I believe, a bypass button. Now these little wheels here are your input gain knobs, just like you would have in any other audio interface. We have a left input gain knob and a right input. So this is where I'm going to be controlling my input gain levels for my guitar. Then in the back here we also have expression pedal connections, so you can actually plug in like a volume pedal or a wah pedal. Then we have left and right outs if you wanted to plug in your studio monitors, for example. And then we have MIDI ins, MIDI outs. And then lastly we have the USB connection, which is going to go to my iPhone or iPad. And then my power source, which I have hooked up to my outlet. Then on the left side we have this XLR output. So right now I have this plugged in to my computer so I can actually record the tones I'm going to be demoing, so you guys can hear that. You can also send this out to a mixer or a PA system if you're playing live. And there's also a headphone connection, so you can actually monitor what you're doing, and this is especially useful for practicing. You have your headphone mix here, and then also your left and right output volumes and levels. So that's about it as far as signal flow goes. It's pretty straightforward, which is nice. The bottom part of the unit is your MIDI control and Footswitch unit. So This is where you can switch between all your different presets. For example, switching between a clean tone and a distorted tone while you're playing. And then also the top row is where you can switch on and off any units in your signal. For example, any stomp pedals, any effects like reverb and delay, you can switch on or off with that. So that's about it as far as signal flow goes and connections. Pretty straightforward. So let's get into the software part of it now. Alright, so now I'm going to go over how to assign MIDI controls within JamUp and how to kind of manage your tones and stuff like that. So again, I'm using a free app for mobile called JamUp. As you can see, I also have BiasFX 2, but since the last demo I did with a similar unit was with BiasFX 2, I thought I'd mix it up and use JamUp. So I'm gonna go ahead and open JamUp now that my iPhone is connected. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the app. So it's telling me please log in and reconnect the device to unlock gifts sponsored by MeloAudio. Okay, so it's basically telling me I have to essentially just log in inside the app.
So I'm gonna go to settings. I'm gonna log in to my account.
So if you don't have one, you can easily make a quick account on JamUp. Again, it's free. So now that I'm logged in, I'm just gonna unplug it and plug it back in. Open it up. Plug it in. Now it should be communicating with the interface, so it's telling me you have successfully unlocked MeloAudio license. So yeah, sometimes you might have to exit out of the app, log in, and then plug it back in so that it's communicating. But as you can see, it's already working. So I can already start playing. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see up here, it says JamUp, right? So the nice thing about the way this is designed is that you don't need any drivers for any of the software or hardware that you're using this with. So for example, I didn't need to install any drivers to use it with JamUp. I didn't install any drivers to use it with BiasFX or AxeFX. This interface just has what is called host modes. So essentially you have to power up the unit while holding a certain button so that it knows which software you're going to be using it with. And you can find that in the user manual actually. This will tell you exactly which button to hold for what software. So for example, if I was powering this with JamUp, I would hold 1 while powering it on, and that tells the unit that I'm using JamUp. So for BiasFX, for example, the user manual tells you to hold 2 while you plug in the power source, and that will set it to BiasFX host mode. So again, you don't need any specific drivers. All you have to do is power the unit while holding a certain button depending on the software that you're using. For JamUp, you're gonna hold button 1 while you power in the unit. And actually, this already did it by default because that happens to be the first host mode. So the interface is already talking to JamUp without having to do any setup or software downloads or anything like that. So that's another really cool thing about this. Alright, so something that I really like too about this setup is that it already knows that I can switch between banks 1A through D because that's just the way the software is set up. So I didn't have to do anything to tell it that my A button is bank 1 and my B button is bank 2. It just knows to switch between those. So let's test it out. So my clean tone. So then I'm gonna switch to my rhythm B, so that automatically switches to my rhythm tone. Then if I want to switch to my lead, I have 2 leads here that I was messing around with. Lead C and then this Jeff Loomis lead that I downloaded from the cloud. So again, all I did was press D and now I'm on my lead tone. Now of course there's more banks that you can add as you make more tones. So if you want to go ahead to the bank 2, A, B, C, and D, you see these little arrows here. There's an arrow pointing down and an arrow pointing up in buttons 3 and 4. That's how we're going to move between banks 1, banks 2. So for example, Right now we're in bank 1A or bank 1B. If I want to go up to bank 2, all I do is press the arrow button here. It's gonna tell me it's on 2, and now I can just switch between those banks. Same if you want to go up to 3. Now I'm switching between banks 3. So let's go back down to 1, which is where I have all of mine. So again, as you can see, it's pretty easy to navigate the actual preset changes, and already it knows to switch between those. So the top row, 1 through 4, that's going to be your effects or your actual stomp boxes inside your signal path. So for example, if I wanted to toggle on my reverb or my delay, I would assign either one of these 1 through 4 buttons so that I can switch off or switch on my reverb and delay. And this is going to depend a lot on what software or hardware you're using. MIDI assignments vary between, you know, Jam Up, BiasFX, AxeFX, Kemper. They're all going to have their different MIDI assignment process. So obviously I'm using Jam Up, so that's what I'm going to be showing you guys how to do. Alright, so now I'm going to go over how to assign MIDI controls to all the different buttons in the Footswitch inside Jam Up. So in Jam Up, we're going to go to the little gear here at the bottom right. That's going to open the settings menu, and we're going to scroll down to MIDI setting. Make sure enable MIDI control is enabled, and then we're going to go to MIDI control assignments. And you see here there's already a bunch of assignments by default, like your metronome is assigned to a MIDI already and stuff like that. But I want to create my own assignments, so I'm going to go to add new control assignment. Then that gives you this like controls menu. So this is where you choose what you want to control. So it gives you like some different panels inside Jam Up that you can control. But I'm interested in toggling either my amp or my effects in my signal path. So I'm going to go to amp effects switch. And that shows you the list of things you can control with these buttons. So you can toggle your amp on or off, your noise gate, stomp, delay, modulation. I'm going to start with reverb. Now you can either manually assign it a CC number, which is the MIDI command, or you can just learn it, which is what I wanted to do. So I think this is easier. I'm going to click on MIDI learn and tell it button number 1 is the button I want to use for my reverb. So now it knows and it's learned that. So now if I go back to my preset and I click on this, it's toggling on my reverb, as you can see. So if I turn it off, I have no reverb. If I turn it on, I have reverb. Alright, so we can do the same thing with literally every part of our signal chain. We can have a button designated to toggle on or off my stomp boxes, my noise gate, and that's how you assign your top row to any effects or amp toggle so that you can control that with your foot like a regular Footswitch or pedal board. So yeah, that's the basic of MIDI assignment and how the MIDI controller portion of the interface works. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the comments, and I hope this has been useful. Again, if you're using a different app like BiasFX, the MIDI assignments are going to be a little bit different. You might have to mess around with it a little bit, and same with AxeFX or Kemper. I did do a tutorial with BiasFX Desktop with the MIDI controller, which is essentially the same thing as far as MIDI assignments go. So if you're interested in that, I would check out that other video. And that's about it. I hope this was helpful, and feel free to leave me any questions in the comments.